Hi all, this is An Evening with Thomas, and we have two guests on today, both from Holland, Jolande and Nike, and it should be a really interesting conversation. There's lots to discuss. Essentially, these two people's lives began together in this lifetime. They have been previous, some 21 years ago, and got married in 1999. And vowed to make a difference in the world together and look behind the masks, expose all the hidden agendas. And unlike many, these people have put things into practice in their personal lives and through various jobs and occupations. So I hope you enjoyed the show. Hi all, and welcome to An Evening with Thomas, and we have Jolande and Nike on the call now, and we're going to introduce them both. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, Thomas.
Hi, THI members, colleagues. My name is Jolande, and I'd like to thank you, Thomas, for giving us the opportunity to share our story and especially share our experience in working in consciousness and preach of me. How do you say it? Practice what you preach.
Yes.
So, I was born 56 years ago as the youngest child in a family of a father, mother, brother and sister. A supposedly normal family, as there are many, with parents who loved us and did everything in their power to take good care of us and give us a good chance of success in this world. We were able to study without a student loan. Our parents financed our studies and ensured a family like most families without visible dramas that had to be overcome. Already during my life and experience as a nurse, I had become a nurse, and later as a therapist in my own practice. I've seen that especially in families that visible, normal functioning, invisible in the dynamics can indeed run a harmful off-body mind control program that prevents family members from functioning as a sovereign human being in this family system. The dynamic then seems more like a symbiosis with a program interdependence, and that is called love and caring for each other. And I was raised in such a family, and it learned me a lot. This program in the interdependence is then confirmed in films, in the media, and in society as love and care for each other. But oh boy, when a family member deviates from this program and claims his or her sovereignty and independence, all hell breaks loose. And so it did in my awakening journey, and it was inevitable. This world turned out to be an inverted world. And it is, as you once asked in a show, Thomas, what would you do when you is given the chance to go to a high vibration frequency, but you have to leave behind all the loved ones and family who can't join you? Well, I thought immediately, I already done that. So we indeed got married in 1999, and there were 32 guests, including family and friends. And from that 32, I think there are only 2 people left. All the others are gone. So that's splitting reality. So what an exceptional event has been in my start in this life was that my father was overstrained at my birth. He had a burnout. And the doctor at that time in 1963 had ordered them that as soon as I was 6 weeks old, my parents had to go on a vacation for 4 weeks without the kids. My brother and sister went to stay with my grandmother, my mother's mother, and I was housed with a colleague of my father's. This story was told to me later in my life by my mother. The interesting thing is that I perceived the story as if it wasn't about me, but about someone else. Consequently, I never asked how my parents and my mother in particular experienced that, to leave their newborn baby with a colleague of my father's. It didn't even occur to me to ask further questions. I can see now that this is a damaging consequence of the unconscious mind control dynamics in our family. And at this point, I don't have any contact with my mother. I said goodbye to her several years ago from my heart, although she didn't see it that way. And because I was done by looking after her, doing her homework, keeping her safe, because she was a Second World War victim, and fear was a big program in her. And also I got that fear as a download when I got born here. So much later in my life, did I see the connection of connecting the dots between this early life experience as a baby and choices in my life, such as my personal need to mean something for newborn babies, to welcome babies into this world. From the age of 6, I wanted to become a nurse who works with babies. In the end, I did not welcome babies as a nurse, but as a therapist in my own practice from 1999 until 2018, to give parents pregnancy counseling, and subsequently gave the baby massage course to parents. And in my practice, I did a lot of body work with clients, like craniosacral therapy. I don't know if anybody knows that. But I learned that if you have a trauma or you don't feel like very happy, it's important that you can talk about it. That's the first thing. And then you have to feel it, emotions. That's the second thing. And then there is a gap. And after that, you think that you have overcome some patterns, and then they hit you again, and that's body. So I work from the perspective that our body contains a memory from everything we ever gone through. And it can be happy things and it can be not so happy things. And most of the time it's in the subconscious, but it is physically, you can touch it physically. I think it's very good work to also pay attention to your body.
Yes.
So I worked as a nurse in the psychiatry in the Department of Clinical Psychotherapy, and I worked there for 8 years. And a logical choice, I think, because all my life I've been interested in what moves human beings, mankind, to be who they are. Looking back, I can also see that from the very beginning of my life, I observe people, how they deal with life, because I couldn't understand anything about how people react So I could also feel the intentions of people from an early age. That often confused me because what people told did not match with what I observed. And I always reacted to their intentions instead of their words or actions. And then it was denied in all its intensity, and I was declared crazy. I think that's a bit of gaslighting. And yes, so in our family there was quite a lot of gaslighting, although they didn't know they did it. So it was a program. And that's why I learned myself early on to translate the inanimate language of people for myself, so that I could respond appropriately to their words or their actions. So I speak in frequency and I also listen to frequency, and it's never about the words. I did teach myself to be a translator between the inverted world and our original world. And our original world for me is pure source being. So it was a rather lonely path until I met Niek in 1994 for the first time at an information meeting organized by Niek and a mutual friend of ours. An information meeting about a course in awareness where you could learn that your beliefs create your reality. I always found it very interesting that in the year 1986, 1987, there were a lot of those courses, and knowing now that NLP is mind control from the CIA, I think all those courses are a bit of mind control. So you bring the common people, yes, without them knowing that. And that's so funny because Niek was when he came back from Africa in 2000, he got back to that course. And I attended that course too as a trainer, because not that I especially liked that course, but I wanted to be with Niek, and Niek was always on the course. So I thought, well, if I want to be with Niek, I go to the course. And I was a pain in the ass on the course because I observed, not that I was aware of that, but I was observing, and my inner voice, I have a strong inner voice. When they did, I saw a documentary about the Scientology church, and they did some mildly things that they did there too. So they tried to support you by, how do I put that politely? It was never good enough. And then at the end of the course, they told us, the trainers, how good we were and if we would attend the next course. And, well, I thought that was very strange. So that was a funny part. That's how we learned a lot about mind control. So I didn't learn so much about course as well as mind control. Well, going back to the information meeting. In this meeting, Niek told about his goals in life, and at that moment he wanted a partner who was familiar with the philosophy of this course and applied it in her life. That was in 1994. The partner also had to love traveling, because Niek liked to travel and he traveled all over the world, and I lived in Arnhem, and I thought that was far enough for me to go. And I did body work, so I was not that fond of that course. So then the fun thing happened, that my inner voice, and it was like a breeze of a wind, my inner voice of my supreme being, I heard it said, so go find out, to Niek, I heard it said, go find out first and then you will come back to me because I'm everything you need. So that was something that went into my mind and then it was away, so I forgot it all about it. And a year later, Niek indeed moved to Africa with a fellow student of this course as his partner. After 3 years, he met me again at a party of the same mutual friend. And I had forgotten that whole comment from my supreme being and respected that he already had a relationship. So I had no further interest in him. Until some time after that party, Niek broke off the relationship with his partner and needed a place to stay in the Netherlands for a few days. And the mutual friend asked me if it was possible that Niek could stay with me. It was now October 1998. And I first thought, well, that's not such a good idea. What do I do with a man in my house? I live alone. I like to be alone. I have my patterns. But okay, when I took a shower that evening, I heard again that voice, and it was very clear in my right ear. And it had an advice that said, do it, it will be fun. So I listened. I listened to myself in that way. The rest is history. 10 months later, we got married. And in those 10 months, we saw each other for 5 weeks and called each day for half an hour. At that time, we didn't have Skype and free calls at our disposal. So we called for 2,000 guilders at the time, a month at the time. And it was the best investment ever. 20 years ago, we got married and expressed in our wedding vows that we are together to contribute to a better world and that we want to look behind the mask, the hidden agenda. And that is what we still do, and in which we learn and grow every day and have a lot of fun in this process. We think of us as a galactic and earthly team, where Nick travels around the world and is mainly active in Africa, and I stopped working as a therapist in January 28 and have since worked at our new company as a facilitator in consciousness processes. So I have made my profession of all the knowledge, skills and experience that I have collected throughout my life, and supporting people in self-examination and teaching them how to apply it in their daily lives is my passion. And we have a lot of fun.
Good stuff.
Nick. Good stuff, thank you. I think so too.
Well, it's always amazing to hear a story of somebody else talking about life experiences, and maybe I do it a little different, but yet in a way to show that each life we live is a wonder in itself. I was born 60 years ago, and I had one sibling, and I was living in Utrecht in a new built area of the city, and then my father got the opportunity to go to Spain. I was 9 years old, and I was so happy. We went there. I discovered a lot about myself, about my responsibilities, taking care of my little brother, and exploring life as it is. We had a school of 6 people, all ages, and it was just fun. And when I came back, it really felt like I was born in Spain, because it resonated the freedom in the Netherlands. Even at that time, it was like a very nice prison. I drove a horse in Spain, and it was in the forest. I had to go back to the Netherlands, and it was in a manege, in a closed concrete environment where you drove only circles, and of course now and then you changed the direction, but that was the limit. So I was really getting my own vision on life at that moment in time already. Then I completed secondary school, and of course I wanted to do something with my life, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I become a road builder, because I always was playing with toys and making roads, and it was really my fun, and I still enjoyed watching the people doing it. And I got also the opportunity to do another 2 years of secondary school, but I thought, no, let's do some practical work, and that gave me the chance to go to another place. And I took a coup d'etat. The African people, they know what I'm talking about. You do something that is completely unexpected, and you take the power for your own. So I did to my parents, because they didn't want me to go already out of the house, but I did, and I went. So I also had, rather than glasses, I had contact lenses. So my world really reopened, and it gave me a lot of joy to discover a new world in a new place. And within that learning school, I had also the opportunity to go for half a year to a Middle East country with all the different cultures and beliefs. And that was also a very nice lesson in practice about having patience with each other, respecting norms and values, etc. So then I went back to the Netherlands. I started university. And then something really strange occurred. I had to pass an exam, and I failed. But I thought, no, I really want to go to the university. So I said to the committee, listen, my parents just divorced and I was sidetracked. Can I get a second chance to do an exam? They gave me the second chance, and I still, until today, I never know if it was because of pity or that I really passed the exam. But nevertheless, I got to the university in Wageningen, and that helped me to really release all the stress of my parents that I had built in all those years before, prior to the divorce. I did a lot of sports, and I get it out of my system, and that was a very nice thing to do. Of course, in my as a student, I got the opportunity to go again abroad to Egypt this time, and I was requested, well, Nick, why don't you go to Egypt? We will start a new project, and why don't you do an evaluation of all the data that are there? And of course, there were a lot of data, but they were not in sync or with what was really needed. So again, here you come with an outside view, and you see how people think. They think in a specific way, and it is in a restricted way. And if you think in a restricted way, you collect only data in a restricted way, rather taking an holistic angle. What is needed for land use planning, or when you're making a plan for the future. And this is also relating to the plans you're making with THI, and all the members that are making plans. Don't look only to what you're doing now, because you might do completely different things you never thought about.
Yeah.
And when I was living in Egypt, again, a whole different culture, a lot of other belief systems, and how people operate with each other. And then later I was asked, okay, Nick, would you like to go to synagogue? I said, okay, well, let's go to synagogue. I had to learn French. Okay, I do it. Nevertheless. And then there was that project was really at a very small, detailed work. And this is not my nature. My nature is seeing possibilities, seeing options. And so I said, okay, listen, this is not my cup of tea. Let me go to another project. And that was in Mali for the World Bank. And we traveled at the time very safely through the country. It's a beautiful country. And we did some planning, and it was really, I felt at home. I felt at home in Africa, and I still have a relation with Africa, and I feel at home. And then one of my professors said, Nick, we have an opportunity for you to go to Costa Rica. I said, okay, that's nice, but I'm working, I did some personal work. I was with a group on philosophy, and I wanted to continue on that. So I said no. Well, he became angry. He became really angry. How could I refuse him? So nowadays I could understand why he was refusing, but at that time it was really a shock to me. Of course, the project in Mali passed. I had another opportunity to work on inland valleys in West Africa, in Ivory Coast, Nigeria, and other countries. And again, you completely always, during all those missions, you come across yourself. You hit some fears, you hit some angers, you hit all kinds of beliefs that you have, patterns you have that are not valid in Africa. So I got really detoxed by going on missions, and it was really one big learning school. So after that, I got the invitation. Well, Nick, why don't you do a doctorate, a PhD on all your projects? Well, that was a nice question, but to do it is the second one. So I did it. Then I failed. I said, okay, it's not working. Give me some time. I continued my research, and then later on, I really got the opportunity to do my PhD, and that was another entry point to go to Niger, where I worked at an international research institute for a number of years. But then I realized that the system in which I was working was not serving the people. It was not serving the people. It was a kind of a high above the people organized organization, and where we had to go for a meeting with all the donors, and the donors now, to China, and we were sitting there with 200 plus people. Yes donor, no donor, yes donor, of course donor. Well, it didn't suit me, so I left. And at that time, as Jolanda had told, we were married. So, and I went back to the Netherlands, started a new company from scratch with a logo. You first have to go inside to be able to go outside. And this is still valid for today. The logo, we abandoned it because it was too complicated for people to understand. But it is, you have to go first in towards your inner core to really rediscover who you are, and then you can go out, and then you can live your vision and mission, and then you are happy within yourself, rather than something from outside helping you to be happy. Yeah. So that was really another way of expressing myself. And then we got the financial crisis here. We went almost bankrupt. We were saved by some money from the local government, but that was another restriction, because then you cannot do this, you cannot do that. But we survived. We always ate biological food. And we restarted our businesses. I got an opportunity to go to Burundi to introduce a methodology to help people to create their own vision at household level. And I want to give one example of that, is that a widow with 2 children, she had designed her vision, and then the children said, "Mama, you have to include the sheep because that will provide us some money." But it was a new vision, and they were really empowered by creating that vision by themselves. We only taught them how to do it, but they did the work, and then they compared it with the actual situation. And that brought such a joy, not only for the people, but also we as a team who brought that to the people. And it is still being practiced in Burundi for thousands of people. And I'm so happy that it is a development from scratch. It starts with the population without means. You don't need money to create your own vision. So rounding up a little bit my story, because otherwise I can talk for another hour. After Burundi, we started in going to build a software tool, because we thought, hey, there is so much going on, but we don't know. We have the fragmentation of all the actions, and we need to get it one again. So we built for that. I will talk later on that a little bit more. And talking about one is also the work I did recently in Mali with the majors of 29 communities. They decided we want a plan, and they created a plan with some help, but they created a plan, and that was a terrific experience. And this is where we are today. As you can see, I lived a wondrous life with of course ups and downs, but in the end, I do everything that is in my ability to do, and it is using all the skills, all the body parts I have, and all the non-body parts. So maybe it's time to go to the next piece of that we would like to discuss with you. And,
couple of things there. Yeah. It's listening to your story and also Jolanda's. The both of you are self-driven.
Yes.
That is the key going forward for all people. Yes. Where there's no need for a title to be a leader. You just be it. And this is what we're trying to do with THI and the States and country groups. Is people are focused on the name of I am the leader rather than being the leader. and you've had to overcome hurdles in life, which we all have, but it hasn't distracted from what the both of you want to do, and you've continued to push forward regardless of the hurdles that are put in, whether it's family, whether it's jobs, whether it's finances, etc., and you've kept going. And that's the lesson for all listeners to this show, is you keep going.
Yes, and it's also because the motivation is from within.
Yep.
It's kind of, I know if I was 31 years therapist, and I stopped with that because there was always a problem from the client that motivated to come to me. And it's so much more fun if you're having no problems, but you are curious about, I experienced this, how can I change that? How can I be the best version of myself? How can I improve myself? So that's what I do now is, again, people come with a question and maybe a problem, but they own the problem. They take ownership over their lives, and that's very fun to work with, because then I don't have to be responsible for their success.
Well, we mentioned in the last show about imagination. People with no imagination only come with problems. People with imagination look at the problem and solve it, and then if they need further help, they will go and seek it. And that's where a lot of society is now lacking. The imagination is gone. Imagination is creativity. The most creative vessel, and we're not using our own creative abilities.
And well, that's also what I see in the personality. So I am pure source, but in this reality, I live as Jolande, and that's my personality, and that's a program. Yeah. It's a program that is given to me when I was born, and I think everyone who is born in this reality gets a download from their mother, gets a download from the history of their father, and the fabric rules of this matrix. I call it the matrix. So you haven't done anything, and you are full of shit.
Yeah.
And that is the inverted world we live in. So our imagination is being used against us.
Yeah.
So we do use our imaginations, only in the wrong direction. We see hurdles, we see no opportunities, we see fears and horrors, and and all the films and movies contribute to that. And that's the fun part of, we use a lot of movies in our research. And for me, it's helpful to see, because I like pictures. I like more pictures. I don't have to read text. I need pictures visible. Yeah. And examples in movies, bijvoorbeeld Divergent, the main character, Beatrice, in the first film, Divergent, I don't know if you've seen it, but she is confronted with her biggest fear. And she is in the water, and the biggest fear is to drown. And then she pierces her finger in the glass of the bowl where the water is in, and it's a plasma field. It just exploded, and she's out of the water into another fear. But that is really, literally how it is.
Yeah.
Beyond the fear is our true self, and we call it the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers gives us 1% of awareness, of consciousness. I will go into that more later. And if we go beyond that 1%, and that is what THI is inviting everyone to do, go beyond your thinking, beyond the 1% that is produced by the matrix. When you encounter the gatekeepers, and that can be the mind control, the off-body mind control, then you get confronted with your worst fear. And if you believe that, then they have you. It's harvesting.
Yeah.
If you believe everything you think, and if you believe everything you feel, then you are a good product for harvesting. I am raised with a lot of programmed fear from my mother, until I learned that what I explain now, that fear is an illusion to keep us small and to keep us out of productive imagination. And from that point on, you have to start somewhere with the fear or with whatever emotion you have. So from that moment on, whenever I felt fear, instead of being afraid and making myself small, I said, wow, that's a big compliment. I'm doing great, because I only can feel fear because I'm doing something on the opposite. So that helped me enormous. But it's true, the motivation for us comes from within, and that makes this whole awakening journey a lot of fun, in spite of all the, sometimes we do have sadness, but most of the time when we are in pain or are sad, there's always something in us that is observing, and it's not obsession, it's just our second nature, or it is our nature, that we observe. There are two parts in us. The one is the personality, that's the program, and we rewrite our program from our heart, from our supreme being. And on the other hand, there is this supreme being who is observing and is very interested in how we become more and more and more pure source energy in the body, in this world.
We all have to get rid of fear. You know, remember, you'll remember this piece.
Well, you're all going to die.
The alt media is kind of obsessed with we're all going to die. It's not nothing to do with asteroids and chemtrails and 50. Next minute it will be 50G. The way it's carried on, it just goes on, and it's all a distraction. That's what people have to understand. If you use your own abilities, you can counteract any of them.
Yes.
And if we do it as a collective, then it's more powerful.
Yeah.
But that limitation program kicks in. I am only this. No, you're not using your imagination.
Yeah.
Maybe to kick in a little bit on the imagination, Thomas, there is one of the things we experienced in Burundi was also that one guy who drew his future for himself. Normally he would take 4 to 5 years to make it complete, but he managed to do it in 2 years because he was remembered every day when he entered his workshop. He saw his drawing. Oh, this is my vision. This is my imagination. This has helped me put forward to do an extra step. Having no money, he did it, and he managed to do it. And another thing is the imagination helped people to stop drinking. Men in Burundi are used to drink a lot of beer, but they reduced the drinking of the beer and gave the money to their wives invested in a chicken, invested in maybe a calf or a piglet.
Yeah.
So the imagination helps people to get rid, but just by believing in their own force, in their own strengths, rather than stick to their habits.
Well, essentially, he manifested his own future.
Yes.
So
Right.
if he manifested that in a good way, and unfortunately most humans operate in the fear, sad, and limitation mode of nothing's possible and I'm useless, and so you're not going to manifest anything in that low vibration. You know, we all have manifest abilities. You know,
Yes.
You can change anything by just changing the way you think and act different. You know, and that's the key. Shall we go into your first piece?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our vision, mission, and strategy is the first piece you want to go to talk about.
Yeah, I think this fits nicely with what we're talking about, because when you talk about the vision, you have to first if you want to go from A to B, you need to know first where you are, and that is the point where we think that is how we see and perceive the world is that we experience through our common senses, the hearing, the smelling, the seeing. And we find this entire world very fragmented, with an even increasing pressure on people that will keep them fragmented.
Yeah.
And a vacation or short holidays it will certainly not fix this. You need to take a next step. And what we also see is that people have lost their way as a human being and became a human doing, living the most important and prevalent belief that money, a good, or somebody else will make them happy. So rather than believing in themselves, we have a surrounding of people who look at each other and you have to make me happy. Well, this is impossible, because I tried it as a child and it never worked for me to make my mother or my brother or my father happy. So let alone that you have to make people happy you don't know. So it's our vision that we as human beings have come on this planet to be here, experience our beliefs, learn, grow, and contribute one way or another to the emotional, spiritual, and well-being of all the planet and the galactic included.
Yeah.
This sounds profound, but there are no other words. We are here with something from our higher self, multi-self, or whatever name you want to give it. We are here with a purpose. We are not here just to enjoy a beer.
Yeah.
And so that brought us to our mission, is to guide individual people, groups, and organizations to discover their true nature as human being, that will allow them to live from the heart and be present in various dimensions and act upon from that multidimensional being in this world. Because if you are really concentrated in yourself as a source being, you start thinking about what you're doing in this world. A practical example, how can people sell plastic rice or plastic spaghetti in Africa? How the hell is that possible? How can you relate that if you are a multidimensional being, not driven by money? You can only do it when you are want to make money at the expense of other people.
Yeah.
And this is this is how we relate to this world, and we want to make a change. And even if it is a small change in our surroundings, just around us in our village or with the people I work with during my missions in other places, that's okay. It is the sum of all of us that is helping us. And not only by the individual, and of course you have individuals that make a huge change, but we each and one of us can do it by ourselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We all are valuable.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, this is why we do these types of shows. I've said all along, THI is not about me. It's just not. I can't fix everything or anything in essence if people are not receptive. THI is not for everyone. It's just not. And that's why I don't really advertise it, because not everyone's ready to receive. Too many are stuck in their low vibrational frequency, and they're not going to get out of it. I warned of this back in 2017, and people are now seeing why I said it then. It's too late. Everything that's coming up now is too much to process, and it's going to be, it's getting ugly. I know we're getting to the second part, more on the masks and stuff. It's getting ugly, as I warned, because people haven't done their own work. It's the process. There's no standardization. Not only on a people level. I'm talking about all government levels, all military levels. They don't have a clue what they're doing because it's utter chaos. It was created that way, and so we have to change that and put it back to basics. We have to go back to the basics. We have to go back to what are the core basics. What it is being human, which I will cover in on Thursday's show. What is being human? Have you really defined what human is all about? Well, no, we haven't.
No. That's exactly, and there is no excuse not to start or do inner work. I visit an elderly neighbor of ours. He is 87 years old, and he's for 2 years now a widower. And the first 1.5 years I visited him, it always was about his pain and his suffering and. Oh my God, and I'm not very good at that, to hear complaints over and over and over again and someone is not handling it. But at some point, I could see he was something was bothering him, and because he is a widower, he has no one to talk personal stuff with. So I encouraged him to speak out because, well, I've heard many stories. I'm used to that, so I could listen, and I did listen. And for the first time, he spoke out, and he in confidence, and it was amazing what that did for him, because we had a real conversation, not small talk. I'm not very good in small talk because I get bored with small talk. So we really, I told him a bit of the information I learned in THI about how the world is working. I use my abilities to help him with his permission, and he changed. And he still is feeling physical pain, but he doesn't have to suffer. There's a difference. It's amazing how he can handle the information I pass on. And then I think, oh my goodness, if the world really gets all the information, they are blown away. They can't handle it. You have to bring it in portion by portion, baby steps by portion, because they flip. But this man, my neighbor, he is, I said it's good to save some money at home, so cash money. Okay, and he talked about it with another neighbor who just rejected the idea. Okay, that's fine, He said, I've told it him, and if he don't want to listen, okay, then I won't bring it up again. So he is really working with the return to sender 10 times. And we have a lot of fun. And so even at the age of 87, you can awaken, because you awaken something that is already awake in you, but you are not aware of it.
You didn't open the door.
Yes, and you have to turn on the light. And then I say, maybe I come to it later, but the Aneh Shai-Feld, I don't know if you know the Aneh Shai civilization.
Not familiar.
Okay, well that's what I learned. As I understand it, we have the matrix structure from a very high intelligence life force, and it runs through our system, etc. And it's literally a software program. And besides that, it's my belief that we as human beings, as organic human beings, as organic souls, as what Nick said, we are here by choice. And our choice is not the choice of Yolande, because Yolande would have run away very hard. But it's my inner being who made that choice to come here with help of the civilization is called the dark matter beings. It's also called the elders. I don't know if it's the same elders you speak about, but they are a humanoid civilization who at one point wanted to restore our source power, our creating power, because they, with all the fragmentation, we as human beings, as original human beings, have lost our creating power because it was shattered and shattered and shattered and shattered. What we are living now is a residue of our original human being, is who we are. Yeah. And the original human being is 100% aware and lives in a very, very high dimension. That's who we truly are. And then there was this hack in the consciousness, and then the fall of in the Bible they say the fall of the angels. But the fall, we are the angels. The fall of the gods, it is. And in this reality, it's a war about our awareness and consciousness. So we are here deliberately. We've chosen to be here, and as I understand it, at the 14th dimension, the dark matter beings have technology, and this reality, way back before breakfast, was an experiment I think in the 5th dimension, and they planted human souls. Not with human seeds, not with a soul, and so they could discover for themselves how it is to be a source being. And they had free will. There's a free will on this planet, so there is no interference. They can't interference, and that's how do you say the vicious? Me from the high artificial intelligence that hacked this reality. They didn't interfere with us, although I think different about that. I think, well, it's quite an interference, but okay. They put 7 layers of manipulation in our awareness of how we perceive this world. So this experiment in the 5th dimension is contaminated, I think. And so now it's in the 3rd dimension. But with the technology from the dark matter beings in the 14th dimension, we are hooked on, like virtual reality, to this reality. And this is real. I am real. But I'm also an avatar. And my supreme being is there in the 14th dimension. And it's like you have a mother tree and a little tree. And my supreme being in the 14th dimension is the mother tree, and I am the little tree. So you're always connected with your supreme being. And and it's in your heart. So the connection with your Supreme Being is in your heart, literally. Our heart is the only organ that is connected to our home world.
Yeah.
That's why the heart, if we observe, and we do a lot of observations, we will explain that later. If we observe, you start in your head because you have to take ownership back, take the authority back over your brain, over your consciousness. So you start in your head by the observation. But if you want to have contact with your inner being, then literally go into your heart with your attention. And there you know what it is to be loved, and there you know how it is to be whole, etc. So, I don't know why I'm telling this, but this is how I perceive why I am here. And this is, I think, with all the vaccination I have had in my youth, with all the fluoride I have had, with the fragmented surroundings I was in, brought up, I am still here, and I am aware of things, and I can feel it. I can feel my light body, and I know that this body for me is more difficult. Even if it's a very slim body, it's still not my light body. So I have my things to overcome, but see how powerful Source is. Because we are here, despite of all our dramas, all our differences, we are here, and we are here with a task. And I'm very much aware that that is always what have led me. That is my inner motivation to do what I do and to am who I am, and I can't compromise to be someone else.
Yeah.
Even if it means I have to say goodbye.
Right, so before we get into your second subject you want to discuss, we're at the top of the hour, and we're going to have a music break. We'll be back.
Thank
shortly.
you.
Hi all, and welcome back to An Evening with Thomas and Zimmerman there. That is who I use for my warm-up for the shows on Thursday, but I use Chevalier de Sangriel, but it's nice to hear that piece again. Right, let's get into learning to recognise programs in yourself and others, and looking behind the masks.
Yeah, thank you, Thomas. Where shall I start? It's the part where you realize that there is a personality which is a program, and we are so used to what we do and who we are that we think, well, I'm looking after I look like my mother, so yeah, it's in the DNA. My grandmother did the same. It's all programmed. So if you can take a step back and ask yourself, okay, I did this, why am I doing that? And maybe we can give an example recently in our lives. We have had for 18 years neighbors, and those neighbors were not very pleasant for me especially, but their frequency was more like a microwave, I would say. And I got very fragmented by them. So after 18 years, they decided to move, and I was very happy with that. But my system apparently didn't believe it, because they were still living beside us, and I saw them every day until recently, a few weeks ago. I saw them packing, and I realized, oh my God, they really are going to move. I'm becoming free of their energy field. And at that point, I was so happy because I already met the new neighbors and totally different people, nice energy. And they came and I spoke with the neighbor men. And they have two very big trees in their garden, and we have small gardens, and the houses are like very close to each other. So preferably we would like them to cut the trees or saw the trees down. And there it kicks in my program. And it's like ego. It's not in alignment with, give the man a break and let him arrive here. He's new. No. I jumped on him. I invited him in our house to get some inspiration, how to decorate the house or whatever. And his wife said, well, maybe you can talk about him, about the trees, because he wants to just leave them in the garden. And I had my program. It's my way or the highway. And so he was surprisingly, how do you say it? He was very surprised about I was attacking him. That's the program. I wanted to convince him that he had to put down the trees. So after that, and I can be very convincing and dominating in that way. So Nick said during the conversation, I think he got it, Jolanda. You can stop now. So that's how we help each other to remind us about the programs we have. So he left, the neighbor. And I didn't have convinced him to cut down those trees. And it bothered me. That's program. That's recognizing program in me. And I felt ashamed. I thought, oh my God, what have I done? So then we talk about it and we observe it from a neutral point of view. So without judgment. But it's important to recognize the behavior you are used to. And also in other people, so I can say that, someone can have an energy field around him who is very obedient, and doesn't have any, backbone. It's also a program. And they will, interact with me from their point of view. And if you can recognize programs, you don't have to take it personal. The reaction of another person, you don't have to take it personal. Even if I do, as this morning, yesterday morning with the neighbor, it wasn't that kind of me. And I can beat myself up about it, but that doesn't serve me, because then I can say I am a victim of my program. No, I'm not a victim. I want to rewrite my program. I want to get to know my program so I can change it wherever I want to change it. So that is how we work in learning the programs.
Yeah, maybe to elaborate a little bit further. It is very interesting to observe also the effect of one's own emotion on how you perceive the world. Maybe you listener can take an own example of your life in your memory, and know that when you were angry to somebody, to a loved one, how you reacted, and then imagine that you were that you were in love with the same person, and see how you react then. This helps you also to see where emotions kick in filtering how you act in the world and how you react upon another. And it is and it is very interesting also to see and to understand how our mind is playing games with us. Because if somebody starts talking to you, you are already, after 2 words, you are already thinking about the answer you're going to give to that person based on those 2 words, but you don't hear the rest of the phrase.
Yeah,
so you react only on...
Carry on.
Sorry.
I'll interject in a minute.
Okay. So if you react on the basis of only 20% of what you hear, then this is the basis for misunderstanding. And where other programs are involuntarily triggered by the other person. And some persons can react very heavily because they feel offended by you, because you're not a good listener. And this is what we have to avoid. So if you hold back a little and maybe take and say, sorry, I have to think about my answer before you answer, you may get a completely different reaction. This reminds me that there are 2 movies that we like to share with you. That is the Inside Out. It's a cartoon, but it shows very good all the emotions and how they act in your body and how you react on your environment. And there is another movie that is called The Shift with Wayne Dyer, and that illustrates how the male and the female programs are working sometimes with each other and sometimes against each other. But it is really an illustration that you can get from movies to become aware of your own personal programs. And it helped us a lot just by watching from that perspective to certain movies. Not with the movie to be amused, but to discover, hey, what is there to learn? And that can be very instrumental for a lot of people.
The key for those who develop their own abilities is to not be the vessel, but be the observer.
Right.
So at that point, I've said it many times on the show where I emphasize the word see, and I'm not talking about the vessel in the eyes. I'm talking about the observer. Yeah. And people hear things, but they don't listen.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you become the third person, which is still you can see and hear everything. I gave the example on the show. If you're on the dance floor and someone starts fighting, and you're in the middle of the dance floor, you haven't seen what's gone on. You've probably seen the reaction, not what started it. Whereas if you're on the balcony looking down on the dance floor, you see who started it and what was the reaction. And that's the key. When you're doing your shielding, you don't do the shielding in the person, you do it in the third. You observe it, the shield going around you.
Yes.
And so this is where we fall short, because the vessel will always react. I've mentioned recently about people reacting to the headline. In fact, I started drafting another piece for that on Thursday. It's reacting to the headline. That's why Twitter only allows you certain characters, so you can't tell the full story.
Yes.
And it's a reduction program, all designed to get us to react, not think, observe, and then come to a conclusion.
Yes. Exactly. And that's also it works fragmented. That's why we come up with fragmentation versus defragmentation. I think we already are born here fragmented. We live a residue of who we truly are, so we are fragmented, and it's very important to realize that all that fragments are reacting, and then you don't have yourself under control. You don't master yourself if you are defragmented. you can master yourself, and you can master your presence in your body.
Yep.
And speaking of that, shall I continue with the piece on the reptile brain?
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So we have a piece on the reptile brain, and the reptile brain is a part of our brain in our head, and it is the brain that is needed to keep our species alive, and it reacts on stress. So where does stress and resistance come from when we dare to change our lives? Well, viewed from the anatomy, in anatomy we learn that our brain is made up of different brains, each with their own task and function in our human body. I want to highlight the reptilian brain. It works autonomously and ensures that we as a species guarantee our survival in the event of imminent danger, and this is determined by the thalamus, an important brain core. A chain reaction of stress hormone starts in our body, which regulates that our body automatically takes action to safeguard our body preservation, fighting, fleeing, or freeze. And they add also fuck. So sex is also a safeguard of our body to preservation. Excessive stress in our body. In our society, we have been brought up, programmed in such a way that it is inappropriate to express this instinctive response to imminent danger. If our boss treats us unfairly and we would prefer to give him a bang for his head, then we usually will suppress this instinctive reaction because we don't want to lose our job, we are too polite, or we fearfully comply with legislation. If we did give in to these instincts, we would literally complete the physical movement that set out our bodies in motion. Granting to the movement causes the body to burn out the stress hormones. Stopping this movement causes a heap of waste of unbranded stress hormones to be created that makes our brain dirty and disturbs the natural cleansing of our body cells and organs. The night serves as a moment of rest for the body to perform a physical cleansing, but the polluted brain requires so much time that there is not enough time left to clean all the organs. If we do not find a way to react and thus burn up excess stress hormones in a constructively accepted way, such as exercising, gardening, walking, making music, etc., organs may start to function less well. And it also overstimulates our brain. We literally call this a burnout. The body is burned out. And then the observations begins, and that is how we handle this. When we as people wake up in the morning with a feeling of stress in our body, the internal clock is tight again, then the first instinct is to fight, flee, or paralyze. We will express that instinct in the way our personal survival strategy is programmed in our brain. So there are people who light up a cigarette, or who drink the first glass of alcohol, or who are, in a state of a zombie, whatever. What Nick and I discovered in our observation when we work up in the morning is that our consciousness feels fragmented. And now we know between 12 o'clock and 4 o'clock after midnight, it's fragmentation time. So as if we were passed by a paper shredder during the night. It is a feeling that I, Jolanda, knew very well the vast majority of my life, perhaps since my childhood. To be half ungrounded, to have a bitter feeling, to have a knot in the stomach, and to have little or no desire to eat breakfast as a result. In the meantime, my brain was working at full speed to get myself back on track at a little bit before I really had to get up and face the world again and face the world also armed. If we observe this, we see the following. Before we are born into this reality, our consciousness before birth on earth goes to 7 layers of manipulation with the intention that we are compatible to function within this reality. We call this the matrix. The matrix is a controlled reality with only one person's purpose, and that is to use humanity as a battery to feed itself as a virus. That means that we as human beings must be tractable, and the most effective way to get the creative man to be compliant is to bring the available creation power to 0. Well, that's what you said, Thomas. Imagine the original consciousness is 100% oneness, connected to all that is, and is the field from which we as the creative man originated. Once in time, in the end, time does not exist, but for us this is still a reference point. Once in a time there has been a first hack that has made this unity fragmented. Although those threads of consciousness are scattered and minimally connected to each other, their frequency is still sufficiently high to remember us to be creator beings. The frequency of these snippets of consciousness is still for humanity unimaginable on earth, so that we regard this as unreachable for ourselves. At this level in consciousness, it has been decided to participate in a galactic experiment to give humanity the opportunity to independently remember who they are and where they originally came from, and that is this high frequency of consciousness is present in them. The best place to do this is this controlled reality, also called the third dimension or matrix. We, as in our higher consciousness or multi-self, volunteered for this. Yes, we are the Snippers awareness. An additional challenge in this third dimension is the fact that a second hack has taken place whereby the fragmented awareness of the people has become even more fragmented in the 7 layers of manipulation. As creative men, we only use 1% awareness. In daily life, we see even less, 0.005%. A human being can see 40 images per second, while a dragonfly sees 230 images per second. If we would see what a dragonfly sees, we would be called insane. Because of all this, it seems that we are completely isolated from our origin. In fact, every meaning given in this reality to our origin is presented in a devious belief program, Christianity, Islam, Hindu, etc. Being something external that, however, has nothing to do with our true origin. Every investigation of the presented perception of reality, including self-image that is forced upon us, we are supposed to be our programmed personality, is wiped out, laughed at, ridiculed, found to be unrealistic, and attacked. This is done by the so-called gatekeepers of the 1% awareness. We can also call this the mind control programs. These gatekeepers come in all kinds of forms. For example, neurological reactions in the body, the emotions we feel, people we met, systems like schools, healthcare, government, thought that cross our mind, etc. All these sensory perceptions seems to be so real and so insurmountable to us that when we start to perceive reality outside of the permitted 1% consciousness, this will be not tolerated in the reality of the matrix. In other words, the message is, you can only live here in oppression, and if you do not accept this, then it's either knocked up or locked up. Imagine our body and brain as a biological computer that runs on uncertain programs, downloads of another intelligence, an artificial intelligence. The moment we are born in the matrix, our consciousness is already fragmented. Other downloads are being loaded by this fragmentation. think of the program of your ancestors and the factory settings of this matrix. Coming from a consciousness that knows what it feels like to be connected, loved and safe, this memory, usually unconsciously, is constantly present in our subconsciousness. From this deep inner knowing, the dismemberment plus insertions that we experience in our consciousness can be experienced as very lonely and unsafe. In addition, the basic fear program is also continuously present and is confirmed by the actions of the gatekeepers mentioned. The threat of knocked up or locked up is experienced by our personality in many ways as we begin to remember who we truly are, what an enormous creative power we have, and that the fears that are presented to us are reversed illusion, get us back into the controlled reality. Changing, as in becoming whole again, means recognizing inserted programs in our thinking, feeling and behavior. Thereafter, realizing and rewriting these programs in tune with our healed consciousness. And as a result, we become more and more different, as in divergent for this matrix. This is a consciousness choice and requires courage because it challenges you to deal differently with the sometimes fierce reactions of the personality in ourselves and in others, the installed program in our consciousness. Rest assured, right through the illusion of fears, you will find your true self. So how does these words work in daily life? The essence is to take ownership over your life again and show up. Own up and show up every day again, every moment in the now. Doing your own research provides you new information about what is true for you and how you shape your life. Everything you collect in information is worth checking if it is right for you to accept it. Most of the information is already present in your own inner wisdom. When you start looking behind the scenes of the presented reality and dare to think different and see the unthinkable, there is more and more room for a paradigm shift in your consciousness. This whole process is not always hard work. It's also can be a lot of fun. Do whatever makes you happy to raise your own frequency. And as I understand it, it's that if I become aware of something, 40,000 people are becoming aware of the same thing. And those 40,000 people also generate a lot of awareness. And as I understand it, and I tend to believe it, it's not only, we do this not only for us on Earth, for humanity, we do this for the whole collective, for the whole galaxy, because they also got hacked. And they observe us, and I like to think they observe us like how it's presented in the Hunger Games, that we are here, the game players, and we are observed. And every time we become aware of our true self and spirit being, they become aware. So we are very, very brave humanity.
Good stuff.
Thank you.
The issue was there was an experiment of higher gods in the real term, not the current 3D term. Gods are people who have gone through the planetary soul development, the galactic soul development, the cosmos and the universal. You know, any single soul can become a god in the original term. This distortion through religion are fake gods, all of them, and they're acting or think that they are source, the creator. And there was an experiment done in this universe of can we put souls into a lower dimension and how far it would go.
Yeah.
The wisdom of that, I think, with hindsight, it didn't work.
Yeah.
You know, there's lots of people, lots of souls on this planet who are much higher than they ever can think possible.
Yeah.
You know, where you're creating your own universe, you're creating your own solar system, and then suddenly you're fighting with governments and people.
Yes.
It's quite a descent, but it was done with free will, and unfortunately, dark forces came in, and this particular universe was created light only. And the dark forces came in, they weren't aware of the experiment and took advantage. This is what we call the fractal virus. And 87% of this universe was dark. At one point, the higher authority was going to pull it altogether because it was infecting the tree, which is symbiotic, and we're all connected to it in one way or another. It's the same as when you have a rose bush and one branch is diseased. You have to prune that back, otherwise the whole plant goes. It's the same thing. Some thought it could be saved, like a renegade group thought it could be saved, and that's what we've kind of been unraveling over many millennia and many lifetimes. And it's whilst it's not all gone, the battle has been won, and the war is about to be closed.
Yes.
You know, and it's unfortunately it's these same entities that have caused all the damage, not only here but right throughout the universe and the multiverse, with the stupid technology and games. And people have to recognise that fact and remember who they are.
Yes.
Because remembering who you are and being who you are changes the whole dynamic of how you interact on this world.
Yes.
You know, this is an exoplanet, and if this gets fixed, many others go with it. And this is why they were messing with the genetics of trying to jump into our vessel, because we have the highest propensity to be creative. They're not, you know, and they won't do their work. You know, particularly the Draco group. They're not interested in doing their work. They just want others to do it for them. And humans, because of the reptilian cortex, have become like them in their image, not our image. You know, and this is kind of what's been reversed. As you mentioned before, the inverted, everything's upside down, everything is backward. And people are only seeing it one way, when the term as above, so below. As within, as without. When people really understand that, you will see the mirror version. I'll probably explain this more in that piece on Thursday. You'll see the mirror version of it. Everything is a mirror, everything's backward. And so most people see the image of the mirror, but they just see the one, which is you. But you has shadows, so it's not one. And you can also, as an observer, you can see through the back of the mirror, not just through the front.
Yes.
And these are the abilities we need to tap into. No, they don't like it.
They don't like it when we see them. I once was in dream time, and I have a phrase I learned from Martijn van Staveren, the Dutch guy, and it's I am force of life. I am force of life. So in dream time, I was in the lower mental planes. I don't know what I did there, but I was constantly repeating, I'm force of life, I'm force of life, I'm force of life. And I saw a man, it was a dark something place. And I saw a person, and I only said, I am the force of life, I am the force of life. And he turned around and his face changed, and a reptilian face. And at that point I woke up. And I know from you that at that point you need to be back in your body to keep your body alive. But the eyes of the reptilian were still on my view. So even if I closed my eyes, if I opened my eyes, I saw those reptilian scary eyes. And I still repeated, I am the force of life, I am the force of life. And they disappeared. They don't like it when they are seen. And that's the fun of observing and looking behind the mirror, behind the presentation.
Yeah.
They don't like it because they are like thief in the night. If you say good night to a thief, they run away. They don't want to be seen.
No, they don't want it. It's the hidden hand group.
Yes.
You know, they do it on the lower level where they'll present an image and push this hand forward and the other hand's hidden behind the back. It's the same thing.
Yes.
You know, yes. And this is why it's key that people get themselves onto the mental planes and out of the astral, which is the trap. That's your holographic matrix. It's the trap, you know, and this is why I had a question from one of the members, sudden death syndrome and people dying in their sleep. That's why. Because they've been trapped in the astral and the spirit didn't get back into the vessel. And so, because the spirit's not in the vessel dies. Yes. You know, without the spirit, that vessel dies. And this is a major course that a lot of the medical and the science people will not look into, because that is revealing the hidden occult elements of it. Yeah. And they just carry on and play their game. You know, and part of the problem is the seducements, the 5 hooks, plus the 6th one, which is the hidden one, which is the ego. And most humans fall under those 5 categories, and if you don't have that, then the ego goes imbalanced, which is why I mentioned about when you go on the mental planes and you're exhibiting responsibility, that's when your junk DNA kicks in. Contained within that junk DNA, which is not junk at all, is all your magic, all your abilities. It might be remote viewing, it might be bilocation, it can be several things. You know, they are your real senses. The 5 senses we have are limitations.
Exactly.
And this is, you know, the gist of THI. What it's doing is get people out of the astral. That is the trap. Yes. That is your holographic matrix. You know, the rest of it is gone down. You know, back in 13 and 14, a lot of those technologies went down. The matrix, the AI. Yeah. They're trying to roll out a new one now. This is why all this push with open source and Bitcoin and blockchain. It's metadata for the new version of the AI, which is nowhere near the levels of the old one, which went psychotic. You know, and so it's up to the people to reject it. You know, you kept saying, I am the life force. In other words, you're stating your own authority, your own sovereignty, your own free will. Most people go into fear mode, and then by fear and backing down, you are then allowing them consent.
Exactly.
The con is sent, and you accepted the con.
Yeah. And you have to start somewhere. So if people are getting back down by their fear, see it as a compliment, because it's reverse illusion. They use your imagination, and don't believe your fear. Don't believe your fear.
Well, unless you are a psychic, how can you have fear?
Yes.
Because fear is something that hasn't happened. It's the future.
Exactly.
So unless you
Exactly.
can predict the future, then how can you have fear?
Yeah.
You know, and
And
then then the key
Yeah.
part of it, if you have fear, you know, it's like I say, we're all going to die, and you exhibit that fear, you're going to manifest it.
Yes.
I've seen people in families who have manifested cancer because they kept talking about it. You know,
Yeah.
so if you can manifest that, why can't you manifest that fear away so that the future part of you doesn't exhibit that particular fear?
Exactly.
You know, Nibiru's coming down. Well, if the whole planet turns around and says Nibiru's not happening, then Nibiru goes away. Nibiru went away numbers of years ago. But that's the reality of it. But people just jump into the low vibration, which is fear, rather than standing in the high vibration and going, that's not happening to me.
Yes.
You know, my parents had this, that and the other disease. That means I'm going to get it. Well, you just talked yourself into it.
Yes.
That's not happening to me. You know, we all get little images in our head of car crashes and all kinds of other scenarios that are damaging and negative to you. Well, if you keep allowing them to happen, they'll keep sending it. Because then you manifest with it. Whereas when I get that image, I'm going to have a car crash, I go, that's not happening.
Yes, exactly.
Thomas, I would like to move with your words. In fact, it's an introduction on the next piece on fragmentation versus defragmentation.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is, in fact, if you have a thought and you go with that thought into another plane, you actively fragment yourself.
Yeah.
You believe on that part, and it can be one direction. It can be I have a heart attack, I have cancer, I will divorce. You name it, all kinds of thoughts, which will only force you to become fragmented. And what is at stake here is that you become aware, but also that you have the ability, like you said, to stop this.
Yeah.
And it is literally say stop, even within a sentence, even within the halfway the thought. I have. No, you don't have. You can say stop to yourself, but you have to become aware of your thoughts. So it is really, again, the observing, like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking like this. Okay, be kind with yourself, be gentle, and allow yourself to step in that pitfall. But you have a ladder with you. You can climb out, and you take the journey, and you practice, and you practice, and you practice until the day it becomes so normal that you abolish those kinds of thoughts that will facilitate the fragmentation.
Yeah.
And if you have the stop, this is a very simple exercise. Stop, Nick. Stop doing it. And it really works. And then we go back to the beginning of the show. Is go back to your imagination. Do you really want to go that way? No. What is it really that you want? Make use of that thought to create the opposite, like you said. So that will help you to get away from those fragmentation, and that you become defragmented, that you become one again, and immediately you will raise in your vibration. It is the law of the physics or quantum physics, I don't know which law, but it helps you to get in the higher planes. And this is what everybody can do, and it doesn't take money. It takes courage, it takes practice, and maybe it takes time in our place where we are now, but we can do it. I've seen people doing it. I talked to people in Mali, and in the discussion they realized that, oh my gosh, we are held hostage.
Yeah.
By who? That's a different question. But there is a raising consciousness, and people see also that there are sometimes external forces that want to play the game of fragmentation, that there are social ethnic groups put against each other, whereas the people themselves, they know it wasn't they. There were other people who were doing it. And we had a village being murdered, and the next day we had a workshop with different groups, and there was no fight between them. They were really wanting the same peace, and they were fed up with all those intrusions that are put upon them only for the reason to create fear. Mm-hmm. During one of the security meetings I talked to people, and there was just another ambush. The next day we said, okay, listen guys, there's only one way you can honor those people that were murdered and that were injured by that attack, is that by staying away from the fear. Stop it. Stop that you can feel that it is a dreadful and terrible happening, event, but don't let the fear go into you. And they understood it. It was amazing. It were people like the drivers of the NGO. There were all kinds of people, but they understood it, and they were grateful because it was another perspective on how they could deal with fear and how they could stop their fragmentation. And it helped, and it was a big surprise for me that they took it almost immediately. And so you see, we are a powerful human being. We can do it. We can make the change we seek in the world. We can start changing ourselves by going back to our own being source and being defragmented.
Yeah, it's think and act different.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, the things going on in many of the countries in Africa, where villages are fighting with each other, and they've done it for thousands of years. You know, how is that going to solve anything? Clearly, it's not. You know, there was a certain meeting back in 13 on the galactic level when, you know, eye for an eye, we all go blind. You know, why are you sending warriors who are low vibration? Those types of warriors we have here, they're not thinking in the right way. There's no flexibility. So, you know, they're the ego kicked in. You know, we have the same here with the military generals. Any meetings to do with war, they send their generals. Well, those people are not flexible.
No.
You know, all they're thinking is we can't be perceived as being weak. It's like the discussions between America and North Korea. We can't be perceived as being weak. Why not? Weakness can be a strength. If you know, you say love is a weakness. No, it's a strength. Reverse it back, and so you know, the African people have to come together. You have lots of resources, lots of things are being wasted on the wrong things. That, you know, we must have this and we must fight with them. No, stop it. Think and act different. Come together as one, because you'll find you all want the same thing.
Yes.
And take on the real dark forces that are playing both of you. Whilst you're fighting with each other, they're stealing all your resources. So they've provided the program, the distraction. You play the program out, and they take everything, and you've got nothing left. When you could have all your resources there and share it amongst the villagers.
Yes. And now they become aware they know now that it's not the villagers that are fighting against each other. It's a third party. They are aware.
It's always the third part, the hidden hand again. You know,
Yes.
and the fragmentation. We're already fragmented. We
Yes.
have to be fragmented to be in here in 3D.
Yes.
You
Exactly.
know, this goes into the multi-dimensional aspect of you. So
Yes.
it's a fragmented part. The key
Yes.
is to put those parts back together. And you can
Exactly.
only do that by working on the self and
Yes.
switching on your abilities. You know, you can't
Yes.
just have abilities if you haven't got responsibility. Otherwise,
Yes.
you see what happens. You know, when
Yes.
the dark magicians, they have no responsibility and they abuse that power. So
Yes.
the light forces have to have a level of responsibility to use those powers. Yes, it's imbalance, we get that, but it means all you have to do is work harder, which becomes a problem to most people. You know, somebody else always has to do it. It's always somebody else's fault. Well, hang on a minute. What part did you play in it? You know, people. This is why I says THI is not for everyone, because most people will not accept their own responsibility. You know, it's like people talk about banks. Well, if you're banking with HSBC and Barclays and Bank of America and Citibank and Wells Fargo, you're participating in their enterprise.
Yes.
You know, even on that level. You know, people complaining about CNN and Sky and other types of portal people. But why are you watching it? You're giving your consent for them to tell you a pack of lies. Just turn it off. That's you being sovereign. That's you acting in your own free will.
Yeah.
You know, Gandhi did it in India. And the Dutch and British tea companies just raping the whole country. What did he do? He told them all to down tools, don't work. The system collapses within days. If everyone decides we're not working anymore, their whole system collapses within days. You know, you've seen what happens when the French block all the motorways.
Yeah.
They lose billions, we don't. They do. So it's non-violence, non-compliance. Just ends their whole structure. It's that simple. But people make things complex and oh no, little me, I can't do this. Well, you can do anything you want, providing you apply yourself. You've applied yourself enough. You know, Alan and I had a discussion. He says, you know, people use less energy not doing things. No, they're not. They're using more. They're using more to facilitate the program.
Exactly.
You actually use less, stepping away from the program and working on the self.
Exactly. Because that gains energy. It's so much joy to work on yourself, even if it's the shadow part. You can laugh at yourself. Oh, I did it again, instead of I did it again. Poor me. You know.
Yeah, step out of the victimhood. That's a lot of people's problem. They're in victimhood. I'm always sick. Well, if you keep saying that, you're always going to be sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's reinforcing yourself.
Yeah, I never have any luck. I never have any money. You know, you just ask for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So these are all simple things, basic things where you can be the change. It doesn't cost any money. It just costs rewiring of you out of the inverted world, or where everything is external of you.
Yes.
And pulling it back in. And by pulling it back in, you're then increasing your vibration, your understanding who and what you are, which then leads to tell you what exactly you are. And when you understand that, This world makes absolutely no sense. The way you're running your life makes no sense. And the idea that pieces of paper are a replacement for your life force energy becomes beyond a joke.
Exactly. And it's never, we discovered also, it's never about the money, because it's about life force energy. And where do you want to give your life force energy? Do you want to give it to a problem? Do you want to give it to fear? Or do you want to give it to something that's joyful, or a nice conversation, or helping yourself, helping someone else? Yeah.
Well,
it's
people
choice.
people think the trust is about funds. No, it's not.
Yes. No.
Definitely not.
No,
And
that's the funds part is so far down the scale in real terms. It's not even funny.
No.
You know, and this is what people have to understand. You know, you can throw pieces of paper here, there, and everywhere. They've already done. The trust has done that in the past. They threw lots of pieces of paper out, and what happened? The clowns went psychotic. They gave all the assets, the physical assets, away, and took pieces of paper.
Yeah.
They lost touch with being human. They lost touch with reality. Do we want to follow that path? No. Think and act different.
Yeah.
You know, life force energy is the most precious thing in this universe or any other universe.
Yes.
Not pieces of paper.
No.
You know, before we had the money system, which was created by the Orion Group, how did people starve? No. They worked. They used their imagination. And
exactly.
we've kind of come full circle. And what they didn't do is what the problem with humanity is doing now, is comparative and competitive mindset. They all work together.
Yeah.
Not one above the other, all the same. Yes, there was a chief with the tribes, but the chief's role was to teach the students to be better than him, not below him, better. So then you have a progression, and then the next students do the same, and then humanity or any species then progresses. At the moment, it's everyone's being kept below the so-called leaders, but they're not leaders. They're followers of a program. This world has no leaders. We have a massive population of followers of programs, and it's about deprogramming and creating millions and then billions of leaders.
Yes.
Taking we're at the top of the hour. Let's go through this one quickly. Taking responsibility, programmed versus authentic, and then we'll have a music break.
Okay. Well, it's not a quick one, but still.
No, it is really a piece we wrote some weeks ago about responsibility, or the ability to respond. We observed that how we are personally related to and involved in this, to establish our authentic starting point and our ability to act, is the responsibility versus automatic reaction, which we have been talking about, from fragmentation from a program. It seems to us that in today's reality, acting has degenerated into giving a primary reaction, instinct primarily based on physical and emotional body preservation. So we would like to share with you a recent example on how our research in consciousness can present itself in our lives, and some detailed insights from our research or inner work, how you will call it. So the practical example was that we dubbed people's inability to choose store-bought ice cream flavors happened early September. We were in an ice cream sorbet restaurant, and we wanted to have an ice cream sorbet consisting of 3 types of ice cream flavor: lemon, strawberry, and mango. Unfortunately, 2 of the ice cream flavors had already been sold out. No problem, we ordered 2 other flavors. It took a while before our sorbets could be made, and subsequently our specific taste had also run out. The servant mentioned it, and we could order again a different flavor. When he came to bring the sorbet, we gave him feedback that it was in fact not correct, that the taste we ordered ran out due to sales to new customers. His first reaction was, "I cannot do anything about it, right?" We provided him a solution to prevent such things to happen in the future. His next reaction was, "But for this moment I can't help it anymore because there were other people who also wanted that taste." Of course, it didn't make sense to continue, and we left it at that. While enjoying our delicious sorbet, we discussed among ourselves the phenomenon of taking responsibility. Things like this can happen, that is true, but it is tolerated or even accepted, and subsequently it becomes a habit. Don't worry, man. An alternative response, which we had hoped for to get, showing taking responsibility, would have been, "Indeed, you have a point. I'm going to discuss with my boss how we can improve this in the future. This is taking responsibility." And then, to our surprise, the owner of the place, who had witnessed our conversation with her staff member, despite she had not heard all the ins and outs, offered us a cup of coffee and asked us further feedback. This is really an example of taking responsibility. You see something happening, but you inquire, you get data, and then you act upon. So this was really taking responsibility. She gave an interesting reply to our suggestion to let people making upfront their choice in 3 flavors of the sorbet. "When I do that, it doesn't sell because people don't know what is in it and they cannot make a choice themselves." Listen good. And they cannot make a choice themselves. We're talking about ice cream flavors. So this is why I indicated on the sign what is on the sorbet, she said. "Oops, from which planet are those people? What a dramatically low level of thinking, or put in other words, an extremely high degree of programming people." In fact, this event initiated sharing our findings in this wonder piece on responsibility. So, if we look to authentic versus programmed responsibility, in our research the word responsible means the ability to respond. This is different from a reaction and is a skill to act in accordance with the event from your autonomous human being. Consequently, the action is in alignment with your higher or multidimensional self. This is what we call the authentic human being, or original responsibility, that refers to ourselves, to each other and the world around us, while maintaining our autonomy and sovereignty as human beings. Original responsibility requires personal thinking power, independence, decisiveness, to allow acting from source. Again, the observing. In other words, it requires an independent integrity as sovereign human being. In our current system of their world, as you refer to, however, a highly modified form corruption of our original responsibility is running. The programmed responsibility with a very limited response ability that basically provides reactions based on existing programs running in the body and mind that offer a multitude of pre-programmed choices. This programmed responsibility has nothing to do with your supreme being. Moreover, it takes away the autonomy of a human, because there is and never will be any thought that goes beyond the framework, pre-programmed choices of the running programs. Finally, this programmed responsibility is part of the global harvesting program because nothing happens, changes, and because of the harvestable items such as stress, chaos, discomfort, etc. are automatically generated. Since 70 to 85% of the population generally lives unconsciously according to this program, there will be hardly any substantial change in consciousness, and therefore in the world in which we live. In fact, this programmed responsibility seems to work like a hypnosis, entailing only two options with the objective of the system to physically and or mentally retain or to harvest. 1. Shifting responsibility onto somebody else, externalizing it's not my fault problem task. And secondly, take on all responsibility from others, internalize. I have to make sure nothing happens to anyone. As you can see, those are not very helpful programs. So if we look into features of shifting responsibility, we observe in many situations and in different countries that the programmed responsibility has frequently an undertone of or is associated with guilt and signifies the potential of being held liable when things go wrong. Moreover, making mistakes has often been made equivalent to being found guilty, with the possible imminent consequence of being punished, expelled, scorned, ridiculed, fired, etc. because of those malfunctions. This settled in our human brain and neurological system, our software, that causes defensive reactions when one is offered to take responsibility or be made responsible. That's not my problem. I can't help it. Then they should have done something else. That's just the way the system is. That's not my task. I will transfer you to the person in charge. I don't want to insult an imaginary superpower with the possibility of being punished, etc., etc. We name those thoughts the gatekeepers, as Yolanda mentioned before, in our software that prevent us from addressing our natural responsibility and internalizing our autonomy. These gatekeepers in our software can trigger solid sensory perceptions such as emotion and fear again, anger, nerves, stuttering, dissociation, nausea, dizziness, panic attacks, palpitations, guilt feelings, etc. Also, we are not aware of this. Our software automatically lets us identify with what we feel physically and or emotionally. For example, I'm fearful, instead of realizing that we perceive a physical sensation of fear in the means of transport, of consciousness of the human body. So here again, the stop exercise can be very helpful. Stop saying, I'm fearful. No, you have a fear, that's all. Features of taking all responsibility. In our research, we also discovered that impeding effect of strong conditioning during the education and through the dynamics of the family system, resulting in taking all responsibilities of the others and subsequently overruling the sovereignty and right of the self-determination of the others. This automatic reaction has gone even so far that exercising control in the domain of the other under the guise of love for the other and being helpful, but what a discovery. The result of this Take All Responsibility program was a mutual dependent symbiosis within the family, and own autonomies of its member were abolished. Consequently, the own thinking ability and the independence to take responsibility for oneself was strongly restricted and even disempowered. If it becomes too difficult, come to us and we will help you out. Or when the responsibility was once taken for oneself and independent choices were made without consulting those family members, this was considered selfish and irresponsible. This in turn led to the physical reactions, body sensations, and bit by bit the original responsibility was replaced by obedience to this type of programmed responsibility. So here you see again how the constant present in such a damaging environment will change your own behavior. We also see this in developing countries where the role of the parent is taken by an NGO, non-governmental organization, and or a donor who is determining for their target group what plan can and what cannot be executed. The local population was, and in most cases continues to be, invalidated in their independent thinking power and thus kept in the hypnosis of the savior program. So how do we go and get back to our original responsibility? So how do we change this apparent blockage? From where we stand now and having experienced increased awareness and the associated inner joy, high vibrations, we definitely recommend doing inner work, researching consciousness and taking ownership of where you stand now in your life. Let's explain further. In the absence of ownerships and where you are now, starting point A, for achieving a goal, point B, the hypnosis of the system or their world continues to work, whereby the programmed responsibility remains leading and a copy follows their world. The first step for actual change is to take ownership of where you are now. This is your authentic starting point in relation to the goal you are pursuing. This action, from our personal perspective and professional experiences, implies that you observe yourself honestly, without judgment, and subsequently you determine what vision, talents, resources and possibilities you have now, where your motivation scores the highest and where you still have to improve your skills, resources and search for possibilities. After all, without knowing A, you will never reach B. Keep in mind that making a comparison of your own authentic starting point with the apparent starting point of another person is part of the same hypnosis and generates again harvest. It requires constant vigilance and awareness to take ownership of where you stand in every moment of the now. The next step, natural responsibility, is stepping into our virtue of courage to change thinking patterns. Courage to abandon the literally fast-known connections in our brain, the highway, and create new, still unknown B-way connections. This may occur initially with anxiety and unrest. Therefore, we must be fearless and think from our sovereignty, from where it is obvious that excuses are just a mindful game of gatekeepers and nothing else. Finally, deal with the programmed responsibility and gatekeepers. Regarding shifting responsibility, step out of the experience and the additional reactions by labeling it. Detach from it and go back to observing. This will offer space to investigate the whole picture and only then act. Become aware of your gatekeepers. We must learn to observe them as a painting and increasingly realize that it is a sensation that is completely different from what you are or have. Brutal honesty, inner work and unconditional compassion for yourself is the key in this awakening journey. Our conclusion is by doing inner work, shadow work on the theme of responsibility, we could shed some light on both program and authentic responsibility. This is where we are now, our starting point A to be able to go to B. We first had to recognize and acknowledge our programmed responsibility in order to subsequently discover and reclaim our original responsibility in our autonomy. Active act from source being. This also means that we take our original responsibility for the choices of actions that we make with the associated consequences. Using the observing mode and discussing our discovery, we increased our authentic responsibility and stopped program responsibility and other limiting programs. It has become clear that the transition from symbiosis and dependence to original responsibility must go hand in hand with raising awareness and learning to create a new reality again, making and executing a plan. From here, we create now in every moment to shape our world. Our plan, vision, appears to have been our guideline for years, namely acting according to events based on ourselves' original responsibility. In the moment we feel and know what needs to happen now and act accordingly. We keep each other sharp as partners and teammates by doing inner work together and above all observing behind the scenes of this reality. This is always our starting point to manifest our life here. All is done without any need for external approval or applause. This brings an inner joy and peace, being content during our awakening journey that can never be compared with an externally induced joy by material matters, money or whatever. Thank you very much for this piece that we could share this. Thank you.
Right, we'll go into a music break and we'll be back with more from Yolanda and Nike, and we'll see where it goes. I think we're going to Africa next. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back to Yolanda and Nike. And it's what's been a fascinating discussion and some very interesting topics. in the final hour, as I am wary, I have another show this afternoon. We're going to be discussing synergy and alignments in practice, and also the extensive work that Nike undertakes in Africa, which will be rather interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas. It's my pleasure to talk about this work. As I explained earlier, I've been wandering 14 years in and for West Africa, and then I restarted in East Africa from 2013. And when we started a project in Burundi, we thought we were new. We thought really, this is fascinating. We want to start an integrated project with agriculture. We do some social work. We do some insurance. And then half a year later, we found out, there is already another party working on the insurance part. Oh, there is already another party working on the social aspect. Okay, with the PIP approach, we were new, but nevertheless, we found out that when we did the investigation to start a new project, we are not aware of all the things that were already going on. And this is not new. This is not only for Burundi, this is in a lot of places going on. There is an example of one party who wanted to work in a village, and then they started, and then they were almost moved away by another party, they said, because, we have shush, we were first here, you have to move, go to another village. So that made me think, with two other guys, let's do this differently. Let's start something on how can we provide the oneness again, to provide an overview what is going on and who is doing what, where, and when. And we started, of course, with the basic tools and Excel, but we find out that you cannot work in a software program that does the counting. So we had to find a new way. And of course, the main reason why we did it is to bring people together. And there has been many examples in many different countries that all the different NGOs and the UN system and the government are working in isolation. They do want to work together if it benefits them, if it helps them to survive or make some more money, but not for the benefit of the people. That is maybe a little bit harsh, but this is what I've discovered many years. And also when I did my PhD based on the experiences in West Africa, Senegal, Egypt, Mali, Ivory Coast, I came to the conclusion, if we really want to bring development, we need to share data. We need to be honest with each other, and we must share experiences. If it is for the good or if it is for the bad, we really need to be honest. And that is a difficult word, apparently, because when I came back after 30 years in Mali, what I saw was not development, not the development I wished 30 years ago. And I felt ashamed, and I said it last January in a workshop. How can we be here after 30 years of development where we invested in projects and almost nothing has happened? It's not the people from Mali. It's not the people from another country. It is not their willingness. It is a fault in our industry of development work. I think.
And the UN and the IMF, I might add.
Yeah. I don't want to put my forefinger now because I've been part of it. But to be honest, I felt ashamed. And if you then raise the question to a person, but you can say no. Then one of the local decision makers said, no, we cannot say no to a donor because then he will go away. So, but listen, this is not development with the people. this is making development over the people, using their being poor as a good excuse for your own livelihood. So when we saw this, and we really thought, okay, how can we change that ball game? So we sat with a clever software person, and he brought us some light. He gave us the possibility to make connections in a software tool, and what I've always thought when I was doing my PhD is that when you do a project in one place, it is like throwing a stone in a pond. It ripples. It ripples, of course, the most in the center where you have your own target group, but it has effects to other places as well. So you have to find a way that other people can profit of the knowledge or the technologies or whatever. So in the software we build that in, and to my honest, I was really pleased that I could now demonstrate that a project in Tanzania can be of benefit to a project in Burundi and to a project in Kenya. So why do Africa need European people or people from the United States? They can do it themselves, and they know it. There was another example of a project leader who presented the results of his research or his project like being a new innovation, and it were things we said 30 years ago, and I was ashamed. How can we still do and repeat the same message, and we think we bring development, but there is none? So this is has become a kind of my work now, to bring synergy and alignment. What is synergy? In fact, synergy is how you do something and that can help another to add value. And he or she or the institute or a group add again value to the next person. So it's a kind of pay it forward in a good way where you get the wheel going. And of course, then you have also the alignment and bringing towards a common goal. And when you need a common goal, you need to have a plan. And if you have to have a plan, you need a vision. So we are back to where we discussed 2 hours ago. You have to start your imagination. And this is what we've done with a group of people in Mali the last 1.5 years, is that we sit with a lot of people together. We created the vision. We created the plan. It was evaluated with the local population. It was evaluated with different people from the ministry. It was really a kind of all stakeholders were in agreement with each other. And this is the first time that there was a connection between the politicians and technical people. Most of the time it is technical, and we forget about the politicians who have to execute it. And here now we have the plan as a kind of direction towards the common future. And this helped also to take along the other parties like the NGOs, the UN, into that plan. So the plan is owned by the people, and this is new. This is really new to my knowledge, that the local population has a say in its development and makes the politicians responsible for the choices for the benefit, rather than it is an external party who comes in and says, okay, now you have to do this. So this is an example of how synergy and alignment can work at a higher level of scale, from this was a third of the Netherlands. It is something like Florida, to give an example for US people. But it helped, and now there is a connection with the lower development at a village level. Had the case in Burundi, which is also synergy and alignment, but that is at the household level, and that is a bottom-up approach. Is you start at linking the visions of individuals, making it work at the household level, and from there you take it to a village level, to your friends around you, to your neighbors around you. Then you go and shape the hill you're living on, that you avoid water erosion, and that you share the profits of fertilizing your ground. And then it becomes a bottom-up movement of people that use the synergy of working together towards a common goal of increasing the livelihood of the village as a whole, and not just one family. No, it is something that starts with a family, but it flows over. So this is in fact the work I've been doing in 2 countries for the last 3 years, and I hope to continue this work for the next decades, because I think this is where we need to go with people, with the population themselves, so that they can really take their hand in their own life and start with imagination, with making a vision, making a plan. And when you have a plan, you can get your development strategies and actions, and then you are able to get some finances. And if you do it right, it will cost less and you go much farther. And there is in fact an African saying that if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to reach far, you go as a team. And I think this holds for a lot of people, not only in Africa, but in the entire world, that you need each other. We need each other to come far and get impact for the benefit of our collective.
Yes.
Thomas,
absolutely. Unfortunately, Africa has been raped by, whilst we will name the countries are just pawns in the game, particularly the Dutch and the British in the past. But they've also not exactly served themselves too well. And we're not all that different. We all kind of want the same things. And the fact that you're going into Tanzania and Mali and you're finding it's all very similar, that's where we have to go back of standardization, but allowing for imagination and flow of that particular culture within the framework. I said it earlier, nothing's standard anymore. Everything's chaos. Nothing works anymore. The old world doesn't work anymore on any level whatsoever. And so the object going forward is to create a new world in the people's image. But the people have got to step up, because the people have allowed themselves to be reduced and allowed themselves to become low vibration and stuck in there. And the violence that goes on in Africa, the people are being played, but it doesn't mean to say that you have to play their game.
Right? No, we have to change the game and it requires courage. Also to think differently, because they're so much used to corruption, and it is easy to take a bribe left and right. But to stop that program, because they want to be different, and yet the temptation is there so much, and it with all the games we know.
Yeah, well, the classic analogy for the African people is the UN can come in and tell them to do this, that and the other. The UN can buy them a load of fish to eat. The trust can come in and teach them to fish what has more value. You know, and this is how you work with people, and get them to see the old way doesn't work. We need the new way, and we need it to do in not replicate what they did, because if we do that, we'll fail the same way as they did, and we have to do it in a different way that encompasses the all. And to do that, you have to stop competing. You know, village against village, country against country. All that has to stop. You know, and the only way we're going to progress as a species on a whole, on a collective, is by we all work together. We all have ideas. You know, just because we're in the Western world doesn't mean we're more intelligent than people in Africa or people in Iran or anywhere else. You know, a lot of our intelligence is fake anyway, because the knowledge we have is rubbish. And so we have to unlearn the lies, recognise the lies, unlearn them, and then rewrite a new program for the benefit of the all, not the few, the all.
Yeah, and sometimes it implies that you have first to go to take the fruits that are ready, that are ripe. There is a very nice drawing on the internet of two donkeys that are fighting for a stack of hay. And of course they don't win one of them. So then they realize that it is better maybe to go together to one stack hay, and then as a team you go to the second stack of hay. So this is really a new way of collaboration, not fighting against each other, but be smart. It is also of being smart and count your resources that are there. To help each other. And when I gave a presentation about this to a group of people from the ministries, they were, this is in fact what we need. But the program in which they were was such that they were so much used to working in isolation and competing within the ministries or against ministries in various countries, that they forgot that there is an alternative.
Yeah,
and this is
you essentially they're spending all the energy trying to claim something or be better than another ministry, when all you need is you don't need a ministry, you just need the people to all come together.
I totally agree. But this is the game that has been there. And there are some signs that things are changing, happily. I really, you hear, there is the president of Ghana who's saying to the president of France, we will take care of our own hospitals. We will take care of our schools. We don't need you. So there is a change. There is a change in that, and but the system is still sometimes difficult, and we are faced with the brain drain. All the clever people that are working in the government are going to the NGOs or going to the UN system, making the government even more weak, whereas you have very smart people in other countries from that country. So if those people were in fact going back to their own country, then the capacity of the government will increase.
Yeah, well, I know Kim has spoke to the Ghanaian president, so I'm not surprised that he's talking in that way. He's not the only one. I don't want to give other names of countries out, because that makes them targets by the UN and IMF thugs who are content with keeping the debt-based system on the whole of the African countries, and when they have assets that can be used to develop their countries in a proper way.
Yeah. And yeah, what I'm doing is just a small piece of raising consciousness also of and guiding people or providing a different way of thinking. And that's my role for most of the time, and providing a platform that they can use if they're ready to use it, because it takes only courage to share your data, but then you need a different set of mindsets, that it is we are going together and we are honest, we are upfront, and if I want something from you, I ask for it, and I have something that I can give to you, and you can use it. I know you can use it, but nowadays a lot of people think they can do everything. It's impossible. We have to become real.
Yeah, we have to learn to share and work with each other. That's what the THI state groups, I think people thought it was all going to be so easy, and it turned out differently. Why? Because people were competing against each other within the group. You have to drop that competitive mindset, that we've all been MK Ultra programmed with, that you have to be better than the next person. No, you don't. You just don't. It's not just humans either. You look into the animal world, and the wolves or the tigers, the cats, if they get a kill, there's always one who gorges on it. Well, why don't you bring the whole family in, and they all gorge on it at the same time? Why does it have to be one? So it's not just humans that has to change, it's the whole planet. Now we can change it. That has a synergistic effect and a symbiotic effect on the plant life and also the animal life, because they're doing exactly the same things as we're doing. And people always say, well, humans are the worst. Well, observe the animal world. They do the same things. They compete with each other. They fight with each other over mating rituals, and then they fight with each other over food when you could just share it out. Africa has a lot of resources. That's why it's been targeted as a continent. But then Africa needs other things from other countries. So, the day we get a body of people similar to the UN, but without that name, where we instruct governments around the world to share the resources, then this planet's going to move forward exponentially. Just because there's oil in North Dakota does not mean it belongs to America. It actually belongs to everyone. Because there's diamonds in South Africa, it doesn't mean it belongs to South Africa. It belongs to everyone on the planet, and when we get to that stage, this planet is going to evolve so quickly. It's not. It's going to be deemed magical.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because last week we were I was in a conference about transboundary waters, and there was the case of a country with another country, and they were still looking only on the problems. But if you focus on the problems, you don't see the solutions. It is like being in a bus. If the tour guide says, if you look to the left, you don't see anything at the right. And this is the same when you focus on the problems, you don't see the solutions.
Yep.
So, and if you share resources and you for the good and for the bad, it's like a marriage. You have to be aware of that there can be difficult times, but there are good times. And there are profits made, and it can be shared.
Yeah, this whole planet was about take. The former trustee just took. He didn't give. He took.
Yeah.
And the gist of what the trust is doing is we're going to give. And what we're looking then from the people is accept the gift, but share it.
Yeah.
That's the people's responsibility. Yes, you will get back. There is. I've seen all the funds that are allocated to each country of assets that were stolen by the harvesters, who then passed it on to the trustee. Because they're that stupid they didn't see that they were basically hand rags for the trustee, and they were the collection agencies. They thought it belonged to them. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
The trust doesn't belong to Kim. It belongs to everybody. And once we get that mindset, then this planet will change exponentially. And it's that inverted that Yolanda mentioned earlier. Again, the former trustee took. This one's going to give, and eventually, it's not a case of keep giving and keep giving. Eventually, you have to bring the take and meet in the balance. That's the 45-55 again. So we're all exhibiting give and take. Give and take is sharing, whether that's resources or whatever. And that's where we have to. It's not a case of, you hear the people talking about we have to go from a patriarchal society, which we are now, which we're not. It's matriarchal, and to a matriarch. No, we have to go to a joint. It's the same with the two hemispheres fighting. No, we have to combine it to then master our own vessel. And it's all about the balance. That balance, 45-55, applies on all levels. Even on our own vessels. Just because I'm a man doesn't mean to say I have to be 100% masculine. No, I have to have a balance of feminine, and the feminine has to have a balance of masculine. But the problem is, a lot of the females, because the program's been heavier on them over the last 40 years, have gone too far masculine. They've forgotten the caring aspect of that archetype. And it's all about balance. Give and take means share. I give you, you take it, and you give back.
Yeah. And if you can be clear on what you want, in Holland we have also the expression dare to ask, and this applies to companies as well, because the people think that they are weak when you ask something, but when you are clear in what you ask, then it becomes much easier also to take the next step in realizing your vision. But you have to know what you want. If you ask a child what he wants for Christmas, he has a whole list. He knows it very well. Or we have Sinterklaas here in the Netherlands. They know exactly what they want. But if you ask to a grown-up, what do you want to reach your vision, then he is stuttering and waiting, and because then it becomes something. Oh yeah, I cannot say this because then I can be judged and I can be at fault. No, we have, and then we come back to what we said before. You have to become honest with yourself, and then it becomes clear.
Yeah,
and then you can.
That's the competitive mind again. If I ask somebody for someone else, that makes me look lesser than them.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. Because if everyone asks and everyone tries to accommodate everyone's needs, not wants, needs, we have to start off with that. There's a lot in the Western world who live like kings. You've experienced it. You've been on the ground in Africa. We live like kings compared to the African people. That has to be corrected first before we enhance lives of people who are already living far better than than essentially 85% of the planet. And this is something that's often lost in Europe and America and Canada and the Western world, shall we say, is we're in the top 10 to 15% of the wealth. Even if you're struggling in those countries, we're still in the top 10 to 15%. It's a sobering thought, and we have to gain perspective, you know. So can you, we've got about 5 minutes before we go into your last piece, can you give us some idea of what life is like in the African countries?
That's difficult to say, of course, but I will give it an attempt. The first thing that comes to my mind is if you are outside the town, the big cities, if you are in Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, Mali, Burkina, whatever. When you come to the small villages, it is, if you go back 100 years in time, despite their circumstances, they seem to have a certain inner joy. And that is in contrast to what we have in Europe, where people are stressed and running and rushing. And there seems to still to be some time. Of course, they have their difficulties. Water is not always at hand. In certain parts of the country, there's a shortage of water in quantity and or in quality. Electricity, like for Mali, it's on the average for West Africa, it's about 40% of the people have electricity. But if you go to Burkina Faso, it is around 20%. There are some countries, Nigeria has a little bit more. So it really depends from one country to another. You cannot picture Africa as one country. It really makes sense if you are.
Yeah. Well, it's if you're in Egypt, if you're in the Wana region from Egypt to Morocco, it's a different. People are different because also of the religion. If you come to the south in Ivory Coast, where it is Christian, you have it's different. It's different climate, but overall, it has a certain way of being together. The family values are still very high. Sometimes to an extent that they prepare meals for people who are not coming, and there is a waste of food. That happens also. But you're welcome. If you are in Holland, if you get your cup of coffee, you get one cookie. In Africa, you're invited when you're passing on. If they are having a meal, you're invited to join them in the meal. If they eat less, so be it, but you're welcome. And that is something we forgot in the West. We see each other as predators or I don't know what, but not as being welcome. And in Africa, life has a certain way of harmony in the villages, despite all the problems. Yeah,
I stop here.
That's a lesson for us all in the West. You know, it goes back again. They're sharing everything out because they're not seeing somebody as a threat or a competitor. And that's something that we have to learn in the Western world. You know, people are competing on absolutely every level. Better shoes, better bags, better car, better homes. You know, it doesn't end. And people got to realise how much they compete in life. You know, social media, you've got to outdo the person who said this comment, or my comment's better than your comment. No, it's just a comment. Why does it have to be a competition? You know, and it starts with the children. You know, you got parents pushing children into sports for scholarships, and they must do it. That's not how to teach children. You know,
definitely.
those children are essentially being used as a vehicle to enhance the parents. That's not how to bring children up either. You know, pushing kids, get young girls into pageants. That's not how to bring children up either. Because it matters not what that child looks like. It's how that child is developing.
Yeah.
You know, the competition is inner, not external. Replace it and put it internal. That way, you are improving the self, not at the expense of somebody else. That's the external. So, you know, it's fascinating. I wish we had more time to discuss life on the ground in Africa. But you know, the actual mention of the fact that only 20% of the village has electricity, and you've got people in California complaining it's been switched off for 4 days, which is not nice. But you try it when it's only on for 4 days, not off, or not on at all.
Yeah.
You know, and we have water program. We've got people within our, at least 2 people in our own group that's got water programs. You know, if you can invest all this ridiculous stolen money, which is what it is, in oil pipelines, we can invest in water pipelines. You know, you know, they'll spend billions siphoning oil, but they won't spend billions giving people the source of life, which is water.
Yeah.
But then it's up to the people in Africa to drive that. We want clean water, all of us.
Yeah.
Now, then you go to the politician. Now you make it happen, and you go to the other country and you make it happen. Because once those old people get together and go, we want clean water, they have to deliver. They have no option. And it goes back to what you said before. People have to define what they want. You know, people. There was a question last week. When's it happening? When's what happening? What are we talking about here? You've not defined what you think is going to happen, or what you wish or desire to happen. So how can your manifest abilities work when you don't even know what you're asking for?
Yeah. No, we're back to square one, to our imagination.
Yes.
Full circle.
So we're going to go into the last 10 minutes, and then we'll have the final music break. So it's all about keeping your energy high, and I'd like both of you to have a final say before we close this show out.
Okay. Yeah, I give the floor to Yolanda.
Well, happiness is a choice. That's it. And I choose to be happy, and it's not always easy, and then I choose an activity that makes me happy. And I think that's why we're here, even if you're in a difficult position. It's a choice. It's a choice where you put your life energy on. And I love my life. And it's also criticized. You can't be happy all the time, because then people can still complain. But I can fairly say that since I met Nick, so it's a joint adventure, our life is one hell of a ride, and it's fun. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe...
Huh?
Sorry to interrupt you.
A case of not allowing others to dictate your mood. Is that not correct?
Yes. And I've let others dictate my mood, because they said I was obligated to them because they were famous. but that stuck, and it's something I've learned along the way. So it's not something for me I learned in one day, but it's like you said in the beginning, it's an internal motivation, and I am very committed to my mission here on Earth, and that makes me happy.
Good stuff.
Even if people say I can't be happy, I am happy. Yes.
Yeah, maybe to give a practical example. One day we had to sell our car because we needed the money to invest elsewhere. And then people were really asking, what, you had to sell your car but you're still smiling? And we said, it was a good way of saving our money, and we made use of the car. But now we need the money for the car. So and we were happy to exchange the car into money. So to solve that issue, we had to deal with at that moment in time.
And to stay independent.
Yeah.
That was the fun part. We were very threatened, and they wanted to steal our tool, let's say. And we stayed in our power without being violent or whatever. And it was, it was a joy to stay in our autonomy, and that meant selling our brand new car. But that was the joy part, it's just a car, and it served us in many ways. So that's a way of thinking we have, and that's what we all day do.
Yeah.
Well, that's the key I was saying about this. Lots of people say, oh, I can't afford the mortgage. Okay, you can't afford the mortgage. Go and buy a smaller house. A house is a house is a house is a house. It's only the external people who put it as a status symbol. No, it's a home.
Yes.
And these higher mortgages are putting nooses around people's necks, which then leads to unhappiness and worry and fear and all the other stuff. Well, you can wipe all that away. Ignore the external people with their status symbols and don't play the game. Go and buy a smaller house. There may come a time when you have more money later in life and you can go back to that house, should you choose. But once you change the mindset,
yes,
that's it.
That's it. Yes, that's it.
You stepped off the debt cycle wheel by selling the car.
Yes. And now we have another car, and it's far more beautiful. A second-hand one, but far more beautiful. And it's perfect.
Well, it gets you A to B. That's all that matters, doesn't it?
Yeah,
right.
In a safe way. In a safe way, yes.
Yeah.
Nick, have you some final words?
Yeah, I was just thinking, just for the listeners, it is worthwhile to find somebody in your environment with whom you can be extremely honest, where you can be extremely vulnerable, and having the opportunity to share some of your thoughts that hinder you that stop you from being happy. And sometimes it helps to have a talk with somebody. Maybe 5 minutes will do. And that you listen to yourself and that you can say, oh gosh, I'm tricked in a program. I better stop that program. And the other can help you to pinpoint that. I'm lucky with Yolanda that we can do the work almost every day. Some hours per day. Even when I'm in Africa, we use Skype. But it's worthwhile the investment of time. And in it, I sincerely hope that people can find a buddy to do that work together, because then it becomes more joyful, and you can share the profits, and you can see the the reflections in somebody else when a person is happy or touched or get the next step in realizing his goals, his vision. I think I keep it with this.
Yes. Well, thanks to you both for taking the time to tell some of your story and your thoughts and how things should go. You know, a lot of it mirrors what we're doing with THI. You know, we can't go forward with the current mindset. We have to change it. We have to think and act different. And we can only do that not by being alone, but by being a collective.
Yes.
And yes, we may have differences here and there, but don't allow those differences to become pervasive.
Yes.
You know, it's about the old song about elevating just you. In essence, I play my role down. Why? Because I want the members to elevate, all of them. You know, so then we're all on a higher frequency, not one higher than the other. No, let's all achieve. Let's all strive to improve each other. Let's all drive each other on, not drag each other down. That's the way Western life works. Drag each other down. Well, that means we all lose. Well, why don't we elevate each other?
Yes.
You know, and cut the competitive and comparative mindset that you are somehow weaker because you can't do this. Well, you can do this, that and the other, that another person can't. So you share it with them. And then you're given and you're taken. And then we have the balance. That's what it's all about, is retaining the balance.
Yes.
Thanks to you both. And
you're welcome.
Thank you, Thomas.
And I'll get ready for show 2 today.
Have fun.
Enjoy.
And I wish you, both of you, every success. And maybe at a later time we can discuss more about Africa. Because, you know, like I said, I've seen the funds that are available for each country for infrastructure and development. Perhaps we can meet up on that and join everything together.
Yes,
Thanks.
it will be great.
Thanks
Thank
to you
you.
both.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
And your final song is Be Happy.
Be happy.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.